Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those of you still on the fence figuring things out, welcome back to another episode of Derailed, courtesy of Archaic Skids. I'm, of course, your host, Archaic Skids. We have the hairy-chested Libertarian back with us because he's my Huckleberry. Now, we were in pre-show discussing Israel and Palestine. So let's keep discussing. You were saying that you were having, when you lived over there, things were odd.
Yeah, they were odd. So before I went over there, I lived over in Palestinian controlled territory for a month. And before I went over, all I knew is that, everyone over there hated each other. So I did my due diligence and figuring out, where this conflict come from, what's kind of got the history on it. And then when I got over there, it was really great. I was able to meet the mayor of the city that I lived in, several both foreign and domestic people that were from that territory, as well as several of my Jewish friends who lived on the inside of the wall, where we were Twitter friends, and so we met up, and many of them with college degrees, very studied, very learned. And I was telling you, one of the things that was kind of funny, I was at this rooftop party. I heard it playing, went up there. There's a band out there, so I got to meet some of the people, and they were my age, younger. And so I was asking them about everything because we had some bombs that went off. It was right after Eid, and so I was asking them about what was going on, with all of the bombing and how they felt about it. And they were almost to a T, like all of them, especially one guy, he said, well, I mean, I would rather live in Tel Aviv. And this was a Palestinian guy. And I was like, so you'd rather live with the Jewish people? And he's like, yeah, in Tel Aviv, I can be who I really am. And the way he said, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
gotcha.
Yeah, I get it. Many of the people over there, they were telling me that the bombings were not necessary, like they were not, it was not a it was not the people of Palestine doing it, but they kept saying, "Oh yeah, it's like we would call it Hicks, but I forget what word they use, but like the people who live out in the country, they don't." It was like they don't have electricity.
Yeah, the hillbillies.
They're right, and so all of this conflict was really sort of the crazy
Those
people.
people that still poop outside.
Yes, they dig a hole and poop in the well. So yeah, this is what they were telling me when I was over there. Is this was largely they even mentioned Hamas because was Hamas had just been elected to whatever governance they had, and
Yeah.
Hezbollah had carried out a bombing on Hamas because Hamas was not being radical enough. And so obviously I'm asking about this, as an American, am I safe? Am I going to get killed? And they're like, oh yeah, they said, these are just the crazy people that live out in the country. They're like, we have colleges, we have electricity, we have running water. The older people definitely hated the Jews. The younger people, they were kind of wanting things to smooth down. So I don't know if this is true. I am by no means a master on the subject, but I'm wondering if it's sort of like the crazy Arabic version of the Alabama guy that's like, hey, hold my beer. I'm going to throw this at George.
I mean, I suppose that's possible. Like, here, hold this. I'm gonna throw this thing into this and see what happens.
Because like what I'm hearing is, all right, so every rocket that the Palestinian, the terrorists or whatever they are, that it's like $1,000 per rocket, sort of a deal. And then of course the Iron Dome, it's over $100,000 per rocket there because they're smart rockets. And it has this feeling of like they're throwing, I don't know, it just sounds really trailer park when you think about they're going to be throwing their $1,000 rockets and then they're getting shot down by like the Cadillac version. It
Yeah, they're like, take this Ford Taurus, and then a Cadillac DeVille goes, nah.
right, man. So the thing that I walked away from after my time over there talking with all these people is I don't know that it's a situation that Americans can fully grasp and understand because we don't really have anything in our history where we hate another people group. Like, it's not ingrained in us to hate another
Yeah.
people group. Largely, we're a melting pot, and we have with
Well,
all.
I mean, if you ask the super lefties right now, all white people hate all black people, but we both know that's not true.
Yeah,
That's just nonsense.
it is nonsense. Yeah, the reality of the situation is it is nonsense there. And even like society was moving that way all the way up until, of course, government got involved and made liking black people illegal. Like, we were moving that way. We're just not a hateful we're not a hateful group. But over there,
Humans in general need to get along because that's better for our safety and security.
and it's better for business.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah. Well,
want
safety and security, same thing.
Yeah, we don't want to be cutting that out. But the thing I got when I was over there was that it is ingrained. Part of your identity is to hate the other person. Not so much on the Jewish side. When I was talking to Jewish people, many of them just wanted the fighting to stop. They wanted some security that, like, they weren't going to get bombed.
And
But
that's on both sides. Let's keep that clear. You
oh,
talk to people on either side of that wall, and they'll say the same thing. Please stop it.
oh, for sure, for sure. And in fact, there were even stories. The mayor of the city that I was in, Beit Sahur, he was telling me a story about uh, the Israeli army came out into Beit Sahur, um, and they were under a siege so that nobody had any food, and there was suspicion of something going on. Whatever it was, the army cut everything down. People were starving, and so they had children deliver messages to everybody in, like, this peaceful protest, and they all went on top of their roofs and they took fat from lambs, whatever they could find, and they put it in skillets so that it smelled like they had barbecue going. And the Israelis finally gave up and went back inside the wall. And he was very proud. And this was an interesting moment. He said, "We won that with a peaceful protest." And he said,
Yeah.
"This goes in the history books." And there was a sense of pride. We won peacefully. And that's kind of what blew my mind, because I would say before going, I was a little more on the Israel can do no wrong side.
Mm.
And when I got over there, I kind of learned, okay, both sides, there have been atrocities. Both sides have done bad things. But in a sense, the Palestinians are in a weird situation, because the ones that are college educated, the ones that want to do better for themselves and make Palestine better, I don't know, even make it a state, I guess. They are fighting the crazy guys out in the sticks that are lobbing $1,000 rockets. They probably bought off of Pinterest. Like, it would be like if it would be like us trying to stop something that was happening.
They're throwing rocks and they're catching missiles backwards.
Right. Now, I do love a good story like that. It would be like us trying to stop something, like when all the riots were happening in Minnesota. I always wondered, why didn't a whole group of us with guns go up there and stand outside the shops and say, "No, you don't get to burn this down, not your property." Largely, most of us like, "Well, it's not our problem. What do we have the police for? Where are our taxes going?" We had all of the excuses.
Yeah.
And in the end, we still sleep at night. It was not our responsibility. And this is kind of what's happening over there. But the media just.
No, I would make the argument we would have more argument to actually, if we all did go up to like Portland and go knock it off, than we would have in Israel and Palestine. Like, that's 6,000 miles away. That's none of our damn business.
Exactly. Right. We would have had more business, posting outside a Chaz Chop and launching stuff into there.
And saying, y'all stay in your little shithole that you've created, but if you try to bring your shit out here, we gonna have to light shit up. Like, that's how it works.
Are we going to have a 1-year anniversary of the founding of Chaz? Like, Does anyone remember when this was?
God, I hope so.
There's got to be something.
I don't know. We just had the 1 year anniversary yesterday of George Floyd.
That was a year ago?
It was a year ago, bro. Homie got killed a year ago.
Oh.
Yeah, time flies when you're like locked down and terrorized.
I'm telling you. Okay, I'll have to run this by you. This is not on the notes you sent me for what we're discussing on the show today.
Yeah, because I send notes. That's who I am.
So I looked up the suicide rates, and apparently, so far, suicide was down by 5% overall, but it was up with people of color. The reporter said, as well as young and old people. So suicide went down with like the middle 30s to 50 or 60, but then it's up for younger, older, and then people of color. So one thing I never realized is that so many like middle-aged white people killed themselves. And the guy that kind of spurred me to look this up on Twitter, he was making the argument that, well, no, the lockdowns weren't so bad because suicide went down. So let me lob this out there. Immediately off the top of your head, what is your argument against or even for it? Like, what do you say to that?
To the lockdowns?
To like, no, lockdowns were not that bad because suicide is down.
Well, that's a nonsensical argument. You can make the same argument that car wrecks are down. I mean, sure, that's true, right? But you also took a bunch of people, locked them in their fucking houses, and told them, if you come out, we're going to lock you in a cage because you're somehow putting your neighbor at risk. So we're going to lock you in this tiny little cage right next to another person locked in a tiny little cage for God knows what. I don't know. Maybe child rape. Maybe we don't know. Whatever. But you're so dangerous. We have to stick you in this shithole because of. Dude, fuck that. And also, I believe his suicide facts are wrong because according to the actual CDC, suicide rates are up overall in the last 12 or the 12 months from April till April. They were up. Just overall, they were up. They were up in every category. And here's the thing, and this is my argument to fuck your lockdown 100%, is that this is the first time in history of not this country, but globally, that we put the needs of the old above the needs of the children.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
Big time.
That's insane.
Big time.
I'm sorry. This is going to sound really bad, and you all can fucking bite me and unsubscribe and whatever. I don't care. Old people are less important than children because old people have lived their life. So if they die, yes, that sucks, and I don't want that to happen. But we need the young ones because they're what's going to continue the human race, not the old. The old have served their purpose. So for us to put the needs of the super old and degenerate and sickly among the needs of everyone else is probably the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen happen. Well, it is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen happen in my lifetime. But it's also the first time it's ever happened in the history of the world. No time in history were old people put above young people, ever, until this.
And I would say, like up until recently, old people have always been very willing to say, no, I'm old, I've lived my life, you continue.
The old people were saying that this time. They were saying, what are you doing?
Yeah. So here was my kind of takeaway from it. And I'm gonna have to look up those CDC stats because that would be super interesting. The article I read did not get their stats from CDC. And it wasn't World Health. It was, I forget where they got it from. So maybe it was a biased source. I'll have to check.
Well, the CDC would probably be a biased source too, but.
Well, I mean, but CDC.
They're supposed to just log what was the reason, like what caused the death.
But if even the CDC is saying suicide rates are up, unless they're trying to sell suicide insurance or something, you know that they're not going to be lying to make it worse. If anything, they would be lying to make it better. But thing was like, we as a human race have gotten this little God complex on where all of a sudden suicide suicide is tragic, but it's
Mhm.
something that it's by and large avoidable, and that like it you can try to work with people, you can try to help them with mental health. It's something that we need to be working on. But a pandemic, or quote unquote pandemic, this is mother nature. Like this is an act of God. When have we
Yeah, God's coming for you, bitches.
Yeah, but when have we ever gotten to the point where we were comparing a natural plague to something that was humanly, that humans do? It blew my mind. I ended up not responding to the guy. Just I was like, yeah, he was one of those 11 follower. I'm pretty sure he was a bot.
Yeah.
But
Read when you watch this. This is the guy I'm telling you. You need to have him on to have your little God and anarchist or atheist conversation, because he comes at it from a very knowledged and inter what's that term I'm looking for? Like, he doesn't see himself as being the knower of all things. Like,
oh
obviously.
yeah, goodness. But
But you're right in your point there. Like, when did we believe that we could play God? Like, that's insane.
right. Well, I mean, I think every generation has seen a person that had the God complex. If you look at the Roman emperors, they had the God
Now
complex.
we have Dr. God Fauci.
Well, and that's the thing is Dr. Fauci, and like, this is something that new atheism has been doing. Back when I was an atheist, it was not so much this way, but it's kind of gone into it, where science is no longer observable, something you can observe in a test tube. Science has become a nom de plume for God. Like,
Yeah.
so it's now a religion of science, and it's disturbing because it's no longer just one crazy person who thinks they're God and wants to try to take over the Holy Land. Now this is a lot of us,
Yeah.
like a lot of people.
In the name of science, which is religion.
Well, because science is the thing that can quote unquote replace God. And
Mhm.
I mean, we all took science, so does that not all make us little gods?
No, apparently, because I understand what happens if you mix like iridium and plutonium. Shit's gonna go boom. So basically, I'm God, obviously. Except
Well,
for that's retarded,
yes,
because I can't make either of those elements, right?
correct. Well,
Um,
yeah.
that's the argument. Is like, oh man, I got in an argument with someone the other day, and they said, "What's so wrong with the woke thing? How did it happen?" Right?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, dude, this has been happening for much longer than you know it has. This isn't something that just was 20 years ago in the colleges and now all of a sudden it's everywhere. This has been ongoing for decades.
Oh,
And they said, well, why? And I said, because we fucking took religion out of our society. And people will build a religion where one does not
yeah.
exist.
We have to
That's
have.
it.
I mean, you can go all the way back to pre-Scope's trial. Secular humanism started coming in, and the whole point was God. The problem I have with how most people view God in the religious circles, let me pick on my religious people for a second, is they like to cherry pick God. So I like the love, I like the this and the that, and then all of a sudden bad things happen to good people and it blows their mind. Well, he says he's a God of love, how can this happen? Well, you can't just, like, God has revealed who he is in the Bible, and he's not just this fuzzy teddy bear. Then on the opposite side, you have people that want to get rid of God. So what's left? What is the highest thing that you can glorify? It's yourself. You are
Mhm.
all that's left. The problem with that is now your preferences become the dictates of a god. And I'm sorry. Like the first catechism, I'm Presbyterian, and our first catechism in the Westminster is, what is the chief end of man? And the answer is, chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever.
Mhm.
But you can take that Westminster Catechism for a secular humanist, and say, what is the chief end of man? The chief end of man is to glorify myself and enjoy me forever.
Yeah.
And I promise you, someone's going to put that out on their Etsy page on a mug somewhere. Be the change you want to see in the world. And it goes back to your woke ideology, where all of a sudden you say, okay, if I really am a little God, you want to glorify yourself higher and higher and higher, and you are going to use anything possible. And if it means turning fear into a virtue, if it means turning hate into a virtue, or being a victim, if victimization is now a virtue, where we would have seen that as vice a long time ago because God sees it as a vice, all rules are off. If there is God, it's only preferences, and then then you're just arguing preferences at that point.
Yeah, 100%, and that's what's going on now, and that's why it's so problematic, in my opinion. And look, I mean, I'm not going to try to push, obviously as a libertarian, I'm not going to try to push anything on anyone necessarily, right?
Yep.
But when it comes to the religious side of the argument, I do get a little irritated. And that's because we do have a great many quote unquote atheists in the libertarian movement who will do their best to prove in their own right that, like, well, God's not real and God doesn't matter and blah, blah, blah. Okay. The woke culture is a fucking cult. Most of them will admit that and say that's what it is. But what they won't say is it's also a religion. And why is it a religion? We took God out of America.
Yeah.
We basically, like, literally the left went to war with God in America and was like, you're not even allowed to pray in school or whatever. Not and I don't mean like the teacher leads prayer. I mean a child. Mm-hmm. He got to a point where if a child said, I want to have a moment to myself to have this prayer, no, that's not allowed. You're not allowed to do that because you're somehow forcing your religion on others, which is fucking nonsensical and ridiculous. But what happens when you take religion away from any population in the history of the world, all the way? I mean, we can go like straight up pre-biblical, right?
Yeah.
What happened? Every single time, what do? They build their religion. Oh, yeah. Every time. So these people are turning this into a religion, and the problem is they have power, a lot of power. Like, they're getting to the point they would have the power of the Catholic Church during the fucking Dark Ages. Well, you know what I mean?
In the Catholic Church in the Dark Ages, so just in case you have any religious listeners, I will even go a little bit further on their side, where again, so in my church, we don't talk politics. I asked my pastor about it once. It was refreshing. I came from a Baptist background and converted to Reformed theology. And I asked my pastor, like, you never talk politics. And he said, why would I? Politics is earthly. I'm concerned with heavenly things. And it kind of hit me when I realized, okay, I don't care if you're Republican, Libertarian, Democrat, Socialist. From a religious standpoint, if you die without Christ, you're going to spend an eternity in hell. That's my faith. That's what I believe. Obviously, I'm not going to point a gun. I'm not going to force you. The onus is on me as a Christian to persuade you using
which is all politics is, persuasion.
But politics is an earthly thing. So you go back into, when we're fighting the Revolutionary War, there are stories of pastors who would preach a sermon about Christ, then they would take off their collar, pick up their musket, and go out and fight. Yep. So the American church, one of the things that happened with the American church is, like, it's not, they did take God out of the American church, but they couched it. So during the church growth movement, the church cried Uncle Sam. And they took this Jesus and they kind of turned him into this patriotic thing. Now, all of a sudden, you can convince people to vote a certain way and attach religious sentimentalities to it. And this is not God. God is not that is not God. It looks like it, but it is not him. The Bible's very clear when it says the job of a pastor, really of a Christian, is if I be lifted up, I will draw all men to me. It's
Right.
not convincing them to be on a different political team. It's not that. Now, I believe that Christian ideology most closely lines up with the libertarian belief system, and that we are free to choose what we want. And when it comes to moral quandaries, you are free to do it. But as a person who loves and values you, I want to convince you to not do it, but I can't coerce you, because ultimately you have freedom of choice to do what you will.
Right.
So that's where I sometimes get a little bit frustrated with my fellow libertarian atheist friends, is that, I understand their skepticism about religion. I was an atheist. I had the same ones. I had the same questions. But for people who kind of want religion to be left outside of politics, they do tend to harp on it quite a bit. And what they're not understanding is atheism is every bit the religion that Christianity is. The difference is atheism either has science as a god, there is that sect, or they have the absence of a god, basically themselves is the god they serve. And so it is tough to have that conversation with, okay, if you really want religion out of politics, which as a Christian, I'm kind of into that. I want you to have Judeo-Christian morals, because I believe those are the best morals to have. Uh, but if you want to leave religion out of it, cool. We'll have coffee, and when we're not talking politics, I will try to proselytize you. But then you have to leave your religion out as well. So
Right.
you can't get up there and say, "Oh, all these Christian rubes, they believe in some magic Santa Jesus that, oh, well, okay, well, who's your, like, how'd we get here? Tell me,
Yeah.
how'd we get here?" You can have that conversation, but that needs to be an eternal conversation that transcends politics, whereas whereas politics is temporal. It's now.
Yeah.
But understand the place, keep them separate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I had a tweet at one point where I said, if you believe in magic, crystals, your zodiac sign, God, or what was the other one? It was um, the shit. What's it called? If we are living in a simulation, right? Simulation theory, right?
Oh, okay, sure.
I said, if you believe in any of that, congratulations. You all believe in the exact same thing. Because that's what it is, right? Like, I don't understand these people that are like, well, we probably live in a simulation. And I'm like, who would build such a simulation? And they're like, well, I mean, a programmer. And I'm like,
Yeah,
and how would that work? Like,
it
but
was
these are the same people that are like, God's not real. And I'm like, but you think a program, okay, it's the same thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It goes back to intelligent design. There's a brilliant documentary out there by Ben Stein. It's called Expelled, and he was kind of talking about how up in higher learning, people are getting fired and kicked out for believing in intelligent design. This is not creationism necessarily. This is intelligent design. This just means that when you look at the complexity of the world, thinking that it could happen by happenstance or by chance is ludicrous. And so they believe in intelligent design. And when I walked out of there, I'd never really heard of intelligent design before, until I saw this. So I started looking into
That's simulation theory, intelligent design.
right. And so when I came out of it, I said, okay, people who believe in intelligent design are basically creationists that just haven't taken the logic that step further.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
that
100%. That's what's happening.
yeah, once you start getting into we live in a simulation and someone created it, okay, let's talk about the mind that created this. And then you can go back to C.S. Lewis, his Mere Christianity, and
Yes.
walk through that little book.
Yeah. One of my favorite things that I've started to see is a lot of people are starting to say, or I'm seeing some more influential people start to say creationism, intelligent design, simulation theory. This is all the same thing, right? It's all the same thing. And they're not saying that they're fully of it, but they're saying like, okay, I didn't fully understand as a younger person what it was I was talking about. But so like Tim Pool's probably the biggest one, where he said, I believe in God. And people ask him, what do you mean by that? And he goes, I believe there's something, maybe not a someone, but a something that's so much bigger than us that we literally cannot comprehend what that thing would be.
Yeah.
And they go, well, how do you prove it? And he goes, that's the point. You can't. It's outside of comprehension. Now think about the fact, and this is his argument. So I love this argument. Us to an ant is God to us. An ant doesn't know. Like, it's just, we're huge, run away, right? No ideology, we cannot even comprehend its life cycle. We study them because we're weird, but to that ant in its little life cycle of what it does, right? It has no ideology of what the human is, what the weird thing is that keeps trying to poison it. Doesn't understand what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Like, think about that times 1,000. That's God. So you can't even contemplate what it would require to build what we have here on planet Earth.
Yeah, and this is something that, I mean, it definitely gets out there in the like the stratosphere when you try to comprehend that. Yeah, God it ultimately comes down to faith. And
by the way, Adam and Eve didn't have belly buttons.
No, I don't believe that they did. Someone said they may have, that God looked and saw an expanse on the skin. Gucci. So the concept that God, that we could understand something as, like, God is outside of space and time. He doesn't exist in a linear world. He's a spirit. He lives in a spirit world. And trying to comprehend that, like, it's not possible for a creation to comprehend its creator. And ultimately, when you have questions like, well, why would God do X? Why would God, child cancer? I hear that quite a bit. Why would God allow a child to have cancer? Well, one, it's like, it sounds callous. There are many, depending on who I'm talking to. If they're dealing with a child with cancer, I take it a very different approach. But ultimately, since we're just having a sort of, educational chat here,
just a
philosophical chat here, God is sovereign. We as his creation, we don't get to shake our fist at him and say, why have you made me thus?
Right.
And the difference between, it was an interesting analogy for ants to humans, God to people, which is a really great analogy. Even if you took it a step further, and
not mine, but I appreciate the analogy.
Right. So if you take that analogy, and if we loved the ants so very much that we made our son into an ant to help them, save themselves. Now it's breaking down and sounding silly, but ultimately that's the difference between the God of the Bible and what someone would say an intelligent designer, or the architect that made whatever simulation we live in. The God of the Bible, yes, he did create everything, but there was that relationship that he had with us, and that we believe by faith his son Jesus was made human, lived a sinless life, died on the cross, so that when we are those who accept him as Savior, we are given his righteousness for free, and that is our entrance into heaven. God no longer sees our sin. God no longer sees our flaws. All he sees is the righteousness of his son. So there was that imputation, is the theological term there, the imputation of Christ's righteousness on us. That's the difference. The person who made the simulation, did he send his son to give us eternal life? The intelligent designer, did he just wind up the clock and walk away? or did he have a personal relationship? Like, there is a difference between those and what Christianity preaches, or what Christianity should teach about the Bible. But ultimately, no matter what you believe, you're never going to be able to prove it in a test tube. I'm
No.
sorry, atheists, you're never going to be able to prove it in a test tube. In the end, if we're totally honest, we both have faith, and we are
Yeah.
living our lives on the faith that what we believe is true. And here's the thing: as a libertarian, I will never point a gun at your head and try to make you think what I think. You
Yeah.
are free to believe what you want. And that's different than the woke crowd, because they will point a gun at your head and they will force you to bend your knee and worship their God.
Well, and that leads back directly to the point of the Catholic Church of the Dark Ages. They will put a sword to your neck and say, obey or die.
And the God that they were preaching was not the God of the Bible. Sorry,
No.
Catholics, it wasn't. And so that's why the reformers and the Reformation had to happen. But when they were pointing a sword at the neck of people, it was about the compliance. It was not about eternal life. It was about compliance to their law and their rule.
And that's one of the things that I see from the atheists of now, is that they want compliance.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And many religions do. I mean, a lot of religions, that is more important than anything else, is the compliance of the followers. I grew up in the Baptist church, in the Independent Baptist church. So if you know Southern
I
Baptist,
was Southern Baptist
all right, well,
growing up.
y'all were heathens, and
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
yeah. So Independent Baptists, we tended to be a lot more strict about a lot of things. My particular branch was pretty strict. There were others that were even more strict. Some of the revivals we would go to at these other churches, the pastor was seen as, he would have never said he was infallible, but the pastor had complete control over the lives of his flock.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did something and the pastor said not to do it, you were directly sinning against God because you were disobeying the pastor. Now, I don't know about you, but that does not jive with biblical theology. And like, this is how abuse happened. So it wasn't just the Catholic Church back in the Dark Ages. People still try it now. The difference between, a little tiny Baptist church, you could potentially escape, but with woke culture, it's now taking up positions of power. Dude, did you see the video that the army put out? This cartoon, the woke
Yes.
cartoon.
I was like, what the I mean, like, legit, what the
But think about it. Think about it. The woke crowd will soon literally have the gun of the government
hmm?
to force.
No, they're almost there. They're invading. I mean, they're basically in every form of government now. The military is I don't know if you saw the video, but it was obviously someone that was fucking with them, but they posted like 30-second clip from the Russian army
Oh, yes.
recruit, right, trying to recruit their video, and then they went to the American army, and it's like,
It
yeah,
was
dude,
it was embarrassing. It was
like this is already game set match because of all this fucking woke nonsense that doesn't make it. Like, look, you don't have to worry about China because China's sitting at their desk going, these fucking idiots are going to destroy themselves. We don't need to do anything.
up. And honestly, when the libertarians have their volunteers, when we make our video about it, like, it's got to be burly chested men chopping wood. Come
Yeah.
join us.
Yeah, exactly. Like manly men. Like, yeah, for sure. I want to switch directions. We are getting through the hour here, so I want to switch directions.
Yeah.
The U.S. Senate had their I don't know if it's their first, but they had their first televised, at least, questioning of David Chipman, who is a sociopathic, murderous son of a bitch that Joe Biden wants to run the ATF.
Yep.
And he's actually worse than I even thought.
So just
Go.
looking at the man oogs me out. Like, and I'm not being.
He's creepy, right?
Yeah, I'm not being hyper.
Does he not remind you of the Green Goblin from the first Spider-Man movie?
Oh, yeah. The teeth, the way that his eyes don't close. Like there is something unholy about that guy. And given his history, again, when Waco happened, I was, what year was Waco? Was that
88?
Okay,
89? I don't remember.
It was like 8 or 9.
No, I was like 10 when that happened.
Okay.
So that would have been like 93, 94. I don't know. Let me find out. Anyway, carry on. Let me find out.
I was a young kid when it happened, so I just remember that whenever I saw the news, they were talking about it, and eventually it blew up. And from what I was told, it was a cult in there. They were not Baptists, so I wasn't too broken up that that they had been bombed. And it wasn't until later when I finally became human and started looking back on what happened to those people. And I will talk to people. Typically, my Republican friends will say, "Well, there was child abuse going on in there." Okay, so go in and save the kids.
1993.
Okay.
April 19th, on my birthday, April 19th, 1993 is when that bitch lit up.
Okay. There were children in there.
Many children.
Children.
Mm-hmm.
And he blew them up. And then the photo that he posted afterwards, and I know I'm just like describing memes that have been out there. So I will be interested to hear what else you've learned about him. All I can say is anytime I even get remotely close to that time period with what visuals I have in my head, I am amazed that we've allowed our government to become this soulless, this evil.
Yes. As far as learning more about him, I mean, it's very difficult. So essentially, he's had basically just a federal life, right?
Right.
From the originality of his original service time, and then his time in the ATF, and then he's essentially done a lot of sat on boards and that kind of nonsense, whatever. Where it's essentially you get paid to do nothing, right?
Right.
I don't know that there's any way. I don't. He's never done anything as bad as Waco, obviously. Like, at least not on record that anyone's discussed yet. So that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just we don't know about it.
Right.
The likelihood of us finding out about it is probably pretty low at this point. He is a awful human being that is going to join John McCain in hell eventually. I know this to be true because the man is not even remotely, like, it's not even like he was like, maybe we could have handled it better. No, he's like, no, they had it coming. They had it coming. That's what he said. These are women and children that you burned alive.
So,
and you said they had it coming. Dude, okay.
Yeah.
I can't say what I want to say right now because YouTube will delete this channel, but you can assume what I want to say, what I would like to see happen to that particular individual.
And it would be stronger than having carnal relations with a cactus.
Yes.
There is a look about him that, like, there's a psychopathy there.
He looks like a goddamn little demonic Satan-ist piece of shit, man.
So this is whenever when I'm seeing what's happened, and I'm going to be interested to watch the recap on all the questioning that he went to bombing Waco so quickly makes me think he wanted to kill someone in a way that goes boom, and he finally got his chance. I read about these people in fiction stories, and I always think, oh, they're scary. The person that enjoys killing, so they become an assassin, and the hero has to hunt them down. I always thought that these people were just made up, but looking at this guy, I'm not so sure.
No, they're not made up. This shit comes out of like these people, these writers, these comic book people. When they come up with villains, it's because they saw this piece of shit and they went, "Oh, real villains exist. I'll just write a script around them."
Yeah, but Ta-Nehisi Coates would take this dude and make him Captain America.
He would. That piece of shit.
Jordan
Fucking
Peterson
idiot.
is Hydra. This well,
yeah.
So
he's Captain America. Jordan Peterson's the Red Skull. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is how this works. Neat.
Welcome to the woke culture. So how many more hearings does this guy have?
I think 2.
Okay.
And like normally I don't get involved, right? In these things, like when people say email your person, yada yada, whatever, right? Emailing my person will do no good because our senators are going to vote for him because Biden put him up, and we have 2 fucking Democrats that just do whatever they're told by the DNC. Yeah. I do have a mass email set up for every Republican senator. Nice. Every one of them that is like, if you nominate this person, if you do not do everything in your power to make sure this psychopath does not become director of ATF, I will do everything in my power to make sure you never serve in public office again because you're a coward piece of shit that will not stand up. And if you're going to stand up against evil, how about baby Hitler? Let's stand up against him.
Okay, so curious, is it 51? Is that what they have to get to confirm this guy?
I don't know about confirmations. I think they only need 51, yeah.
Okay. I get.
But Joe Manchin, who is a Democrat, is also on my list of Republicans, but he's not a Republican. And then what's her face? Cinema from Arizona.
Oh yeah.
Who's also a Democrat. These are the 2 senators, Democrat senators, that are the reason they haven't been able to get rid of the filibuster. Because these 2 Democrats are like, no, that's dumb. We're not doing that. So both of these senators also, I'm going to hit them in this mass email and go, if you confirm this person, I will ruin your life. Mm-hmm. Like, I will, because this is the one time if anyone's going to put up a fight, it's against this psychopath.
Oh, yeah.
Rand Paul put up a great fight against Brennan. He didn't win that argument when it came to Trump. But Brennan, like, this is going to sound really bad, so sorry, Libertarians. Brennan was not as bad as the sociopath they want in charge of the ATF.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and I know Trump's ATF guy wasn't great. Don't get me wrong. Like, so shout out to Reed. I know he wasn't great. But no one compares to this sociopath that they want in charge now.
Well, the part that gets me is that you could show the charred bodies of the women and children from Waco, and everybody be like, oh, okay, yeah, it happened. But I promise you, if a video surfaced of this guy saying that he doesn't like trans people or something, he would be done.
Oh, it's game.
Oh, yeah.
It's over.
We can't have that. We can't have that monster.
Mm-hmm.
What is?
But he can stand on the graves of children, and they're like, I mean, he's probably okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a long time ago.
Yeah, it's like
other time.
I mean, David Koresh was a cult leader.
He was a white,
and he's a white supremacist. Even though there were black and brown people who lived there, but whatever. No. But if he said like, hey, maybe Mexicans should stay in Mexico, that'd be a game changer all of a sudden.
Then he's out for the great crime of that. The Church of the Woke doesn't make sense. And this is what,
to be fair, most churches don't make sense. But.
Right. Well, and this is why I'm really wanting the Liberty Party to have great messaging this time around to say, why do we have an ATF? B, why are we
don't need it?
Why are we giving government this much power? Look at these monsters. If we can't point out the monsters and say, all right, you can talk about your guy or their guy getting in, I'm going to go to the root of the problem. Why do we have this position, and why do they have this much power?
Yeah. I was actually just recently speaking on the phone with Mark Schneider earlier today, and we were discussing like, does government have any feasible like reason of existence? And I mean, obviously, he's a Republitarian. That's what I call him.
Okay.
And he believes that they do. But we did actually come to agreement on one thing, that I drastically am trying to push nuclear. Oh. And I think I can hit the left from the left and the right from the right with nuclear. Because it's the right's like, well, I mean, we got to have clean and self-efficient, and we got to be able to protect ourselves. You're right. And there's only one way to do that.
Nuclear.
And it's nuclear.
Yep.
And then from the left, they're like, well, but climate change. And I'm like, okay, but there's only one technology that exists that does everything you need it to do, and we can do it real fast. And you know what it is?
Nuclear. It's nuclear.
But I did admit to Mark, so I'm sorry, everyone. Government's probably the only thing we have with the power to actually pull that off right now.
Yeah, right now. I would be in, like, if we could wave our magic libertarian wand and be in the little perfect anarchist society, I think that we would have it, because this would be a huge money-making opportunity for people.
It would have taken off in the 70s. Like, they would have been like, oh, yeah, this is obviously the future.
There's a kid on YouTube who's 13, and he built his own little mini nuclear reactor, did a TED Talk on it.
Who is he? Because I need him on my show.
He's got a TED Talk. That's where I learned about him, was from a TED Talk on nuclear. And he was explaining, actually in a very clear and concise way. At this point, I think he was 16 or 17. And he had a patent for it's a nuclear reactor about the size of a phone box that's buried. And he said, I've put in several redundancies you would never need, but I understand people need to feel this. And he said, my box could run 30 houses for like 100 years on just this. And the biggest thing was making it so you could put it on an assembly line to mass produce it. The thing, we would have it. This is probably how we get flying cars too. So dang it, let's get on that. But
yeah, we'd have flying cars if it wasn't for government.
But living in the real world where we are now, in the political situation, government probably is the only thing that could push that through this quickly, because they have the stranglehold on what it is that we can produce and react with.
Yeah, for sure. And here's the thing. It's not even a matter of, like Mark and I were discussing. He said, in his opinion, he would like to see either no subsidies at all or only subsidies for nuclear. And either one of those things gets nuclear moving forward, right?
Right.
So from a government side, if they're only going to subsidize nuclear, that expedites the process.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Right?
Yes. Okay.
But either that or don't subsidize any of it. And so it's like legit, the free market will go to work and figure out where's our most profitable and opportunistic situation.
Sure.
I don't see the government giving up power at all, which means they would want to subsidize, because they like to pick winners and losers.
Oh, yeah. And then they would feel like they owned it somehow, and they could come in and confiscate it when they needed it, which is why, I would much rather have it privately controlled. But I'm that way. Honestly, like, give me my perfect government, and it would be a president and a secretary, and her job would be to make sure that his suit is pressed and matched. So when they say, "Oh,"
I want to go back to the days where no one knew who the president was.
It would be phenomenal. Like, who cares who the president is? I said I would love for the president to have less influence in your life than the first baseman of your favorite baseball team.
Yeah. I read an article from 1908 where someone said they just were asking random people, right? Who's the president of the United States? And they're like, I don't know. And they were like, who's the starting pitcher for the New York Yankees? And they did know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh my God, I want to go back to that time.
That is the future libertarians want.
Yeah, because that means that, and people say, well, they're uninformed. No, it's because they didn't have to be, because that man had so little power
Yeah.
Didn't matter. The starting pitcher of the Yankees had power.
Yes.
He was like, oh man, is he gonna walk someone? Is he gonna? Is like, how's this gonna screw with my day, right? But the president had so little power, no one cared who it was.
Yep.
I want to go. I don't miss because I never saw it, but I want to go back to a day like that. You know,
you and me both. Let me tell you, I'm, man, yeah, you and me both. It would be nice just to build my business, not have to worry about the government coming in after me.
Yeah, for sure. All right, my brother. We are pushing up on an hour here. Tell people where to find you, what you're doing. You got a book coming out, hopefully soon.
Book coming out, and it's going to be in a month. This thing is going to be out. Just talked to my editor. She sent me her final round of edits. I edited her edits, and so it's going to be going to design. So yes, look for Drosselmeyer, Curse of the Rat King. I will have website information closer I get to that. Look me up on Twitter, THCL official. My other one, That's What's Up, got nuked. So it is, I'm trying to get it back, but for right now it's no more. So look me up at THCL, the Hairy Chested Libertarian official.
That's in the description, everyone. So
Awesome.
you can just click that.
And if you want
your book next month, you're saying?
Yep, I'm hoping by next month it'll be ready to go.
Right on. Now, because Paul and me are friends, I assume I'm going to get an advanced copy, and we'll be able to do a reading, maybe not necessarily reading, but a review of my thoughts of if his book's even worth you guys buying. I don't know.
I will.
I assume it's going to be worth buying.
It's going to be worth buying. It is. I started it the first day of 15 days to flatten the curve. And it was going to be a short story, ended up turning into a trilogy, and it's very timely for what we're going through now. I'm not going to say it's dystopian, but it's got some of those elements in it. But yeah, so be on the watch out for that. And if you want to listen to my tunes, because I write music, look me up on YouTube. PT Superman is in Part-Time Superman, or houseoflelmusic.com. That's me.
Right on, man. That's awesome. Everyone, check him out. He's actually probably one of the most talented people I know. When that book comes out, you guys definitely go ahead and order it. Is that going to be available for pre-order soon, or
I don't know.
Or is that in a month?
Well, I know I have to check with my. I got to check with my editor and the publisher, the company that I'm using to produce it.
Oh, that's right. You're doing this yourself. You're publishing it 100%.
I don't screw around when it comes to owning copyrights anymore. If I'm gonna create it, I'm gonna own it and make some money off of it.
Nice. Can't get more libertarian than that. That's awesome. All right, everyone. Check Paul out. Paul's great. Check him out on Twitter. Check out stream out the YouTube, and I'll also link them. We'll discuss, and I'll link those in the after show.
Yep. PT Superman, Part-Time Superman, or houseoflmusic.com.
Sweet. Check him out. Buy his crap. He deserves it. T-shirt company coming very soon. Some really great stuff, which is going to make a lot of people laugh. So you'll enjoy starting those conversations with the normies. Peace, everyone.